Oh my God. Wake up, everybody. New Nuggets GM just dropped. Well, not GM. What is up, everybody? Welcome to the DNVR Nuggets Podcast.
Let's go.
Very, very interesting one for you today, as the Denver Nuggets have finally hired their front office, or finalized their front office, and they did it in sort of a unique way. We're going to break it all down. Ben Tenzer in as vice president of basketball operations. Former Nuggets executive Jon Wallace in as vice president of player personnel. I'm joined by the true general manager of the Denver Nuggets, D-Line Co.
That's right, guys. Listen, nothing could keep me away from this emergency podcast. Not an ocean, not a time difference, not a swell of disappointment, not a general feeling of malaise. I'm here, and I'm ready to break it all down.
Well, I'm glad for that, man. There is a lot to break down. Some interesting stuff. And to be honest, I was live, Eric, with All NBA show earlier this morning, and then I just did a real GM hit that I had committed to, several days back. So I only had a little bit of time to try to make some phone calls and try to figure out some things that are going on. This is a story that'll develop over the next 24 hours. The Nuggets will hold a press conference tomorrow. And Josh Kroenke will be there and answering a lot of questions, because let's just go through the details real quick. Ben Tenzer, executive vice president of basketball operations, not president of basketball operations, vice president of basketball operations. And then Jon Wallace, you thought, okay, there's going to be a POBO and then a GM. Jon Wallace, executive vice president of player personnel, which I am told will be basically the GM. So this is going to effectively be president of basketball operations Tenzer, GM Jon Wallace. But it is interesting that that's not the titles they're given right out of the gate.
Yeah, they're being really, that's the craziest part about this, is just everything that we've heard out of the Kroenke organization is just like bizarre title shuffling. It's crazy because we don't actually, it's weird to say, like, who is the GM of the Denver Nuggets? We're like, well, that role doesn't exist. It's like a committee. Like, this is where, and I was trying to think, like, this is like what you do when you're just trying to confuse people about what it is that you do. It's like when RK, you know what I mean? You're like, well, I'm not a garbage man. I'm a administrator of human waste. I don't know what I'm a waste disposal administration executive. Like, oh, my apologies. My deep apologies.
100%. I will say that I think we can. We did talk about how the Nuggets sent out the very strange email several months back clarifying that Josh Kroenke was executive vice chairman and that Stan Kroenke was governor and owner. So, like, the titles do feel both weirdly important, but also we kind of understand this to be that Wallace will be the general manager, Tenzer the top here. Let's just talk real quick. We've talked a lot about who Ben Tenzer is, and I'm sure you're wondering these things as well. Like, we've talked about Ben Tenzer. He's been with the organization for forever. Maybe the longest tenured employee at Kroenke Sports, at least on the Nugget side. And so he's been through all parts of the business. Very smart guy. I personally have never really thought of him much as like the basketball mind, behind things. Right. But I do think that he is a guy that understands every aspect of the business, including every aspect of front office, from contracts and how deals get made, how the synergy works between all the different things. So I do think it's like, he can be very good in this project manager type role. And my hunch is that the Kroenkes hired two people. They hired two halves of a brain, very different guys. And that Ben Tenzer, I think, can be very good at that half of the brain. I question how connected he will be around the league, which is an important part of that brain, is just like, do I know enough people? You have to be able to work angles to be like, okay, we need to get this done. So I need to start working this and working that. I don't know if he's going to be great at that, but I do think he will be good as this project manager within KSE. He's going to be above Jon Wallace in the pecking order, but I don't necessarily think he will be in terms of like basketball ideas. So, but just knowing that part, so Ben Tenzer we thought he might be GM and somebody above him, but it's the opposite. He's actually going to be above, but in that role more or less.
Yeah, man. I get it. I mean, listen, as a person who is involved in creative endeavors, when I hear a committee, like, it just makes me like tense up, especially when we're looking for somebody who's sort of like a vision. I mean, you've heard about the idea of, sort of a strong visionary, being able to lead an organization and have their ideas not only be, thought out, but then matriculate throughout the entire organization. And like, I don't know how you necessarily can have a strong point of view when you are forced to always sort of temper it with somebody else's ideas. That being said, at the end of the day, it kind of feels like Josh Kroenke just kind of wants to run the organization, and he has guys that he feels comfortable with, that he likes their ideas, he likes them as a sounding board, he likes them to be the everyday talking to the players. But at the end of when the rubber hits the road, as it were, it feels like this is now Josh Kroenke's personal project, right?
I don't think so, but I do understand why it feels that way. What I will say is I think the Kroenkes have always wanted to be involved in decision making and have been involved in some big picture decision making, like max contract extensions, for example, for certain players. So I think that's always been the case, even under Tim Connelly, even under Calvin Booth. And I think that's one of the complications. Like, I bite my tongue on a lot of this stuff, but it is one of the things where a lot of people's criticisms of Cal and or Tim Connelly in years past, I've just known some of those have been, yeah, well, I think the Kroenkes really heavily influenced that. Whether it was they said, no, this is what we're doing, or whether it was just made known that that's what they would prefer to do. And do you say no to that and then risk your job and all these different things? So I think the Kroenkes have always had their hand in it. And I do think that this means Josh and Stan probably want to continue to maintain that influence. But I do not believe it means that they hired people to execute their vision. Like, okay, we're going to determine what pieces here. No more than it has been before. We'll see how it plays out. But the other, okay, go ahead. You can respond to that part.
Well, I was just going to say, like, I don't get that sense, but it does seem like it doesn't, at least in this initial, I mean, and obviously this all comes before any kind of explanation from Josh himself. To me, I'm just curious, like, who would, in your opinion, is the ultimate decision maker here?
Well, it's always, the buck is always going to stop with Stan. He has to sign off on every single deal. I think that Jon Wallace, and now we'll get into him. So he was part of Tim Connelly's front office, joined kind of late. He wasn't there the whole time, but he joined kind of late. He was a tremendous player at Georgetown and a guy that I think is very well connected in the player world. Like, he's one of these guys that even though he didn't play in the NBA, everyone in the NBA knew him. He was one of the guys that didn't make the NBA, but everybody that did kind of goes back to him. So he's a very connected player. And I think a smart basketball mind. Like, I've been told this guy is like a, he's sort of the David Adelman, I guess, in some ways, the front office people, and that it was a guy that everybody was like, yeah, that guy's going to be a GM someday. And my hunch is that he will be the guy who is most the architect of the basketball decisions. Ben Tenzer, the executor of a lot of those. And the hope is that they'll collaborate, but Jon Wallace's vision is going to create the Denver Nuggets by and large.
That's the part that's like a little unnerving to me. It's like he's generally speaking, he is in many ways and it's.
But I think that was true of Tim Connelly, man. I mean, I think that it was always Tim Connelly's vision, but every now and then Stan says, yeah, but I like this guy.
Well, I think
like, okay.
Well, I think that dynamic is unavoidable if you're not the
Agreed.
team owner. But just generally speaking, like, if it's got to see this play out. I just don't. To me, I'm like, oh man, something like there's a big trade that happens. There's a big draft that happens. It's like, okay, cool. This feels like a bit of a Wallace move. Oh, this feels like more of a Tenzer thing. This seems like a I don't love the idea that there's not a clear figurehead.
Yeah.
But listen, I mean, it's above all else, it's so hard to judge these moves immediately because you really don't know what you're talking about outside of just knowing the personality of the guys involved, their background, what it is they've done. But I mean, I saw your take earlier online, and it's one that I agree with most of all in that. I'm just nervous that we're bringing people in that are kind of learning on the job. Not that they haven't been in this world, but they've never been in these positions in a time where we are. I mean, time is really of the essence. We are in an absolute win now window. And, if we're wasting any time at all, like when Tim Connolly came in, he ended up being an excellent executive, but not when he first arrived. He made terrible mistakes.
Right.
He didn't really know how the salary cap worked. He got roasted nationally for trying to make a Kenneth Faried deal that in the end had to be voided because it wasn't legal. I mean, there was just like missteps. He hired Brian Shaw, things that you just kind of stumble in along the way. And he had been working in a front office, in a lot of the same ways that these guys had been up until that point. And it's not until you are the guy, and you have to stand on your own 2 feet and make the decisions that you find out, like, do I actually have what it takes? And do I have to learn to navigate personalities and figure out how to talk to the owner in the right way, how to sell an idea through. I just don't like that we have on-the-job training as part of what it is that we're going to be going into, especially with such a pivotal offseason, not just for the Denver Nuggets, but for the league at large. Obviously, there's so much turmoil with the second apron and all the maneuvers that are going to be taking place, the trades, the this, the that we just know is going to happen because of the new salary cap or the new collective bargaining agreement. And I just it makes me nervous. I mean, I'm at the end of the day, I'm just not. I don't feel a sense of calm at all.
Right. I mean, nor should you. I think that's the thing. That's the number one sensation I think we feel from this is a more mystery than certainty. And in a moment when certainty feels like it's exactly what you want. But here's what I'll say. So real quick, just to kind of get the clear structure here, I think Jon Wallace is going to be the basketball minds. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Ben Tenzer. He's done an enormous amount of jobs. I don't know that he is like this brilliant basketball mind. I do think he's a brilliant mind, and overall he's a very smart guy, but not a brilliant basketball mind. Jon Wallace, by all accounts, is. I don't know him well enough to say for certain, but I do know that is his reputation. And so he is, that is what I think he's going to be bringing to the table. And now you have two guys working in synergy along with a new head coach, also in synergy, in theory again, and we're making this work. And then you have Josh Kroenke. And when you asked about Josh Kroenke's involvement, here's what I'll say. I think Josh Kroenke and Stan Kroenke love to have their voices heard and their opinions and influence on the team, but I don't think they have the time or will to be a general manager. And that's why when people say who's ultimately making the decisions, right, I don't think Josh can make that many decisions. I think he'll make the decisions like, should we give Jamal Murray a max contract? Absolutely. We want to do that. But I don't think he's talking about Hunter Tyson's 4-year deal and how to get off of it. So that, and I think that'll remain. Here's the thing that I think fans can feel appropriate about, or like it's a fair criticism. And I know the team will hate this. This was certainly the cheapest option.
Yeah.
Whether it was the best option, worst option, or whatever, it was certainly the cheapest one because both of these guys are first timers at this role. And then the last thing it signals, Jeff, and I think this is, or I'm sorry, Eric, and this is just backstage.
What the hell, man?
We're bringing Jeff Morton on here in just a second. But the last thing it signals here that I think is important is when you talk about them learning on the fly, I agree, that's scary. I don't think the Nuggets view this offseason as a big moves offseason. And I think that they look at this as, yes, that's a concern, but what were we really going to do this offseason anyway? This is their learning year where there's like nothing to be done anyway.
I pray to God that's not the mindset they're going in with, because that
I would bet it is.
I mean, I'm sure you're right. I hope you're not right. I choose to believe you're not right. There's nothing less, nothing that feels worse than the idea that every year isn't the most important year when you have Nikola Jokic. The idea that, we already, through Project Dynasty, through the vision of Calvin Booth, I mean, vision can obviously go in the wrong direction as well, have this notion of, all right, we're this is not going to be the year, but the year is going to be coming. Then we have it's just,
they went to Game 7 against the Oklahoma City Thunder this year. I think that's honestly, I'm not trying to be funny.
I know.
I think that's honestly how they feel, and there's some truth to it. Some truth to, hey man, we're right there. Let's take our first break. We're going to continue this conversation though, because there's a lot to get to, but we are going to bring in Jeff Morton because he makes a good point that this is an unconventional style of front office for the NBA, but it's not necessarily unconventional for the Denver Nuggets, who have maybe done something very similar a decade ago. We'll get into that on the other side.
Okay. Cake. Oh boy. I've been listening all week. You guys have been talking about cake. It's made me super hungry every single time. And then I listen further and then I'm no longer hungry, but I am interested. Cake it's a business owner's home mortgage partner. And what does that mean? There's a lot of people that have sort of, they approach the world in a non, I guess, conformative way. They're a lot like Josh Kroenke. They're a lot like the Kroenkes in general. They don't
small business owner. Yeah.
Small business owners, people that don't have a W-2, people that don't go to work every day, people that are trying to make their own way in this world. And if you've ever done that, like I have, I was a freelance designer for a long time. You know that when people are handing out mortgages, they want to see that you have had a very clear pattern of income for this amount of time, that you can set your watch to it. And people that don't very often find themselves unable to get a mortgage for that reason. Our own Brandon Spano was that way too. What the status quo is, if you're a regular employee at a company, you get a W-2 and your income shows you on your tax return. Traditional lenders love this because it's simple, because it's more complicated for business owners. By maximizing legitimate business deductions and expenses, business owners can reduce their taxable income to keep more money in the business. Basically, by being a wise business owner, you actually make yourself appear to be less of a credible lender in the eyes of many lenders. So Cake can get business owners approved by validating your cash flow through bank statements, certified profits and loss statements, or business tax returns. So who's it good for? Creative professionals, people like me, contractors, tech entrepreneurs, business founders, freelancers, anyone who kills their own meat. I think they mean that metaphorically. They might mean it literally. I guess hunters, let's find out. So it's just a new way of thinking about mortgages. It's a new way to get yourself approved if home ownership is something that you are interested in, and who wouldn't be. Cake is the way to go. So you can reach them at cakehome.com, 1-888-EAT-CAKE, and get the process started. And
Toyota.
Yeah, I mean, come on. We're talking about Toyota here. Unbelievable. Trucks have always been part of Toyota's DNA for generations. Toyota has built durable legends destined for greatness and perfect for Colorado. Whether you're conquering off-road trails or hauling the weight of the world, there's a Toyota truck that's just right for you, just like the all-new 2024 Tacoma. I got to think maybe we're thinking about a 2025, 2026 here coming up. And the Land Cruiser as well. Toyota offers 17 models with available all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, like the Epic 4Runner. Toyota also offers more low and zero emission vehicles combined than any other automakers to give customers numerous choices to reduce their carbon footprint. So if you're interested in that, like I am, or just Toyotas in general, what a great vehicle. And again, the official, unofficial car of Colorado. You can visit your Front Range Toyota stores at a location near you. Auto Nation Toyota in Arapahoe, in Centennial, Corwin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, Mountain States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson Toyota East in Aurora, and Stevenson Toyota West in Lakewood. And the official vehicle of DNVR, let's go places.
All righty. Let's now welcome in our guest, our good colleague and friend, Jeff Morton, the king of Morton.
Old cast. Me and you start talking about old bands from the 90s, Jeff, and I don't want to talk about the GM search anymore.
90s? That's that new stuff to Jeff.
I know.
This is true. I'm used to the 20s. So it's nice to see you, Adam. Jeff,
hey,
it's nice to see you again.
Good. It's nice to see you. The Colorado Sports Guys podcast. You can check it out. So, first of all, Jeff, are you surprised?
You know what I am is depressed because I'm looking in this camera and I just realized I look like Gallagher.
Yeah.
And
First
that is
reference.
extremely depressing, actually. No, but no,
The worst part is you just realized this.
yeah, I know this. Well, it's the old thing. The synapses don't fire as quickly as they used to. I'll be honest with you guys. I was surprised, but I was surprised at the Back to the Future thing. To be honest with you, because as soon as I saw the news that they were going to do the co-VP thing, I was like, oh my god, this is total Workentine and Chapman again.
Yeah, so walk us through that. I mean, this is the late 2000s with the late Carmelo era. So what was the setup then?
Well, prior to that, people got to understand and set up to that. When Stan bought the team, he inherited Pierre Lacroix and Dan Issel. So he didn't do anything with the front office structure when he bought the team. And then Dan Issel hired Kiki Vandeweghe. When Issel was forced to resign, the Kiki took over. So this was kind of a traditional thing until 2006. And in 2006, he basically didn't renew Kiki's contract and decided unilaterally to bring on two guys, which was Mark Workentine and Rex Chapman. And I said this on my podcast today. It was successful. It was a successful thing. They won over 50 games 3 times. They went to the Western Conference Finals. But it was a mess. It was a big mess. But Stan likes guys, a collaboration of ideas. Let's just put it to you that way. And that was very much, well, I don't know about collaboration, but there was an exchange of ideas going on at that time. And Stan, that went away when Stan had to give up control of the team to Josh in 2010. But that 4-year period, what you're seeing right now is very much the same thing that it was back then.
So here's what I find interesting about that. And I'm going to have to go to my old trusty favorite show of the last 2 years, Shogun, because Stan Kroenke reminds me a lot of Toranaga, the like main architect in that show, in that I think he enjoys or prefers, just by nature, a lot of subordination below him, but also even sometimes at the expense of chaos. Yeah. Meaning I wouldn't mind everybody below me being a little uncomfortable and weakened. Not because I think that they're bad, but because I think that's what worked best. And if you think about the two biggest characters of the Kroenke era on the Nugget side, George Karl and Michael Malone. Big egos, big personalities, very empowered over time, became very, very empowered. And I don't think he necessarily enjoyed either of those, especially as things progressed. And it's not because it wasn't they're good or bad or this or that, but I do think there's a level of, there shouldn't be, in his perspective, too much power. So going and getting a Bob Myers at $10 million a year, okay, now we have somebody with a lot of power who is in some ways more powerful than the org. And I just think by nature, Stan Kroenke views that not just as something he doesn't love, but something that's bad and actually hurts sports organizations when somebody wields that much power. Actually, D-Line, just hearing that, I mean, you see Jeff nodding. I think he agrees with this. What do you think when you hear that?
Well, that dynamic obviously is a little terrifying, but I don't know that it's always true necessarily. I feel like he's given complete carte blanche to Joe Sakic to run maybe it just depends on organization. That's really what it comes down to at the end of the day with this organization, is they are so multifaceted. There are so many things that they have their hands in at all times. Like you think about just the sports organizations, and they're not like minor. The Arsenal and the LA Rams, like these are massive, massive organizations with very big focus on them. And then, it comes out the basically city that they are developing that's going to be in central Denver. I mean, it's very literally impossible to have eyes on all of these, pies at all time. I feel like it's different with the Nuggets. I just feel like, and Eric Lacroix was sort of speaking to that this is something
basketball
that is,
guys.
This is a bit of a pet to them. And so I think that they maybe view the Nuggets through the lens that you're talking about, that they do not like the idea that somebody would kind of be bigger than they were when it came to this team. But what's to like about that? That's not, especially when there's a shadow organization up top in Stan. Josh is somebody that I feel comfortable with being sort of more visible at the helm because he does seem like he's so passionate. And he actually, like, if he would just name himself the GM, I would actually be much more comfortable with that. Like, I'm like, okay, Josh is a young guy. He's a smart guy. He loves basketball. I think he's savvy. I just don't like the way that they're weaving this thing. It's just like, it feels like a lot of middle management, which, as we know, just makes things more watered down, and less powerful and less vision based. And I don't know. I don't like anything that I've heard. I have to be honest.
Jeff,
I come back to that asinine email we all got and how very important it was that certain titles that were made clear. Well, when you have people who care about titles, they really care about who's under them and what their titles are.
Titles are very important.
And look at the Denver Nuggets. The Kroenkes care about the Denver Nuggets. Now, they don't show their love in, say, paying for front office, staff, arena, practice facility, but they care about it as far as a competitive thing goes. And they very much have a vested interest in it. And they always have. This is Stan's baby. He bought the Denver Nuggets and Colorado Avalanche, and back then it was known as Pepsi Center, for the Denver Nuggets, because he's a basketball family. Isn't all the Waltons are just go back are really big basketball people, and Stan's family is too, and that was it. This is why they got into sports. Ownership was for basketball. They care about it. But the problem is they care about it, but they also, for Stan specifically, doesn't care about it enough to invest in it. And this kind of thing is like, strikes me as here's a budget for front office staff. This is you can hire who you want within this budget. And it was never going to be a Bob Myers.
right?
Because that's too much. And also, and Adam, you are 100% correct. There's no way that there's that kind of power would be devoted to someone, because the Kroenkes do have a lot of say in a lot of different things, as you point out, max contracts and other things like that, and trades. So that would require ceding control that in a way that they aren't necessarily, and very specifically Stan is not necessarily comfortable with.
And by the way, that level of control can swallow up an org. So I think they're smart about this. I think both George Karl and Michael Malone both created problems eventually. Like, however good or bad they were, they grew to a place where they became unwieldy, in some regard. And I think they would argue, well, yeah, we should be. We're like Pat Riley, and we know who knows basketball better than us. You should just get out of the way and let us operate. And I think that the Kroenkes looked at that, probably rightfully so in both cases, and said, no, this has to be a collaboration. What they have hired, if I'm trying to spin this in a positive way on their behalf, and by the way, I'm with Eric. I feel very uncomfortable right now. Yeah. I mean, we are in the top of Jokic's prime, and every year that goes by, it just feels like the Nuggets have to maximize it. And this, to me, feels like way too much volatility and unknown for my personal liking. So I just want to, when I say this, I'm just trying to give arguments here. Right. I think the Nuggets are coming off of the worst collaborative front office coaching staff they've ever had. And I think that they are trying to find ultimate collaborators. You could argue, they got yes men, because that would be the flip side of that coin, which is maybe partially true. But I think they are bringing in guys who they view to be like, these guys are going to work together. They're going to have these different roles. We have a coach who's very much willing to work together because it's his. Everybody here is incentivized to be collaborative because it's their first job and their success depends on it. So they're swinging that direction.
Oh, without a doubt. And, Sorry, Eric. That's fine. I didn't want to step all over you. But
God damn it, Jeff. Come
on. I think, like, I talked to a lot of people about Jon Wallace this morning. Nothing but glowing praise for him everywhere I talked. Everyone was like, this guy is smart and he knows what he's doing, which is great. But the problem is, if you have the Nuggets' current situation, this is my concern. If you have the Nuggets' current situation with devoting resources to the front office, and you throw these guys in there in the deep end being novices, let's face it, and you got Jokic there, You've got also throw it out there too. David Adelman is also a first-time head coach. Yes, he coached last year, but this is his first 82 game regular season as the head cheese. You got three who are completely new to this thing, relatively speaking. And if you don't throw a bunch of resources in supporting them, they're going to be lost. And they really, with Jokic and the importance of Jokic and that potential extension coming up in July, you got to dot your I's and cross your T's. And that is basically where I'm at mentally. I was like, what are they going to do to support these guys and make sure that they have the best foot forward going forward? Because if they don't give them that, they'll fail.
Yeah. All right, let's take our second and final break. I saw Nicholas or somebody was in the chat saying we have 4 breaks. We have literally never had 4 breaks in our show. We've had 2 for the last 6 months. We're taking our second and final break. We'll be right back after this.
Bet365. It's now an official partner of the Denver Nuggets and Colorado Avalanche. You know all about Bet365. It's the thing that Dev uses to basically make his money that he can then show to Cake so he can get a mortgage, I would assume. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. They're an official partner of the Denver Nuggets and a proud partner of they are a proud partner of the Denver Nuggets. And when it comes to basketball, they've got the early payout offer. Obviously, the season's over, but these are things to note. Like, not every book is the same. With the Bet365 early payout offer, when you're a winner, if your team goes up by 20, that would be if you'd bet on the Oklahoma City Thunder. They went up by 20 last night. No surprise there. With an instant payout. So you don't have to wait till the end to see if they ultimately blow it like the Denver Nuggets would have done in the past. Let's not talk about that. You can download the app and use the code DNVR365 when you sign up and get into the game with the best book out there. They are our friends and our partners at Bet365. And then we've got
Red Hawk. Real homies.
Oh, my God. The absolute homies, the Red Hawk Roofing. I mean, come on. Denver's best roofers have now joined the DNVR team. Even saw them on the Denver Nuggets broadcast. Guys are making it big time. And Red Hawk Roofing is so committed. They are the title sponsors, the official sponsors of this week's draft show. That's right. The Denver Nuggets do not have a pick, but we are still.
But they
see what's going to happen.
Not a GM, but. A couple guys
chopping it up, letting you know what the 10th pick for now the Phoenix Suns mean to the Denver Nuggets. Listen, they have long-lasting relationships that matter with their customers. They use quality material. They're huge DNVR supporters. Again, the title sponsors of this year's all big extravaganza draft show for us. They'll give you a free no obligation roof and property inspections, free in-depth photo reports, which, as Adam will tell you, it means sometimes over 80 photos. You can't always see.
800.
Oh, excuse me. 800.
I'm telling you, it's an absurd amount of photos for a roof.
I'm quite certain there are not 800 photos of me that exist in this world over my entire life.
There's 800 photos of my roof that they have taken this year.
They were just looking for its good side, clearly. So listen, when you need the best, get a hold of Red Hawk Roofing. They're our homies, and they're the best in the biz.
Yeah. All right, back here, segment 3. We're keeping Jeff Morton on here. So, some of the things people are saying now about this Nuggets organization. Actually, a couple other things on Jon Wallace. I do think that he is going to be like a player-friendly general manager, which I think is important. He, like I said, he has relationships with a lot of people across the NBA, somehow very charismatic, and players like him. And I think that's kind of important coming off of Cal, who I think just had no relationship, or very little relationship to players. So that's one thing, again, that I think when you look at what the Kroenkes viewed as the problem, and I think accurately so, sometimes you swing so hard in what you were lacking. You go from one relationship to another, and you're like, I really was bothered by this, so I'm going to find somebody that does this. And I do think that he checks that box, which is kind of important.
Yeah. It is important. It is important. Like later on in the show, I actually found an interview he did on a podcast while he was the acting GM of the Iowa the Iowa Wolves. What is the G
Yeah, I
League?
think it's the Iowa Wolves.
Yeah.
So you can get a little bit. We can play a clip of it later, but like you can get a little sense of what his philosophy is, how he is like a really personable guy. To me, it's like that can be a really big strength. It can always be also be a weakness if you tend to, maybe be too heavy on the side of the player, which, that's not always the correct way either. I mean, I don't know, man. Like, I wish, like, I'm hoping as the time goes on, we get maybe a little bit of a little bit more of a look into what this search looked like. It really does feel like they were like, we gotta hire, what about a guy we already had? What about you? Are you already in the room? Like, I hope that they actually went through their due diligence and actually talked to a few guys. They actually did explore the options, like went looking high and low, and it wasn't just a hire of convenience. I don't love that they basically announced this this is the result of a 2.5 month search, and it's guys that they've already worked with before. Even if it is ultimately, it's just
what about this part of it? What about this part of it? I'm kind of curious what Jeff thinks of this. Building on that point, they were rumored to get Matt Lloyd from Tim Conley's Minnesota front office, and instead they got Jon Wallace from Tim Conley's Minnesota front office. It does feel like, okay, how many people do the Nuggets organization actually know? We make the trades with the same teams every time, and I guess we just look at the same roster of candidates from the same team.
Just look at it this way. The entire time Josh has been, nominally in control of what has been going on with the Nuggets, Masai Ujiri, he hired in 2010. Masai used to work for the Nuggets as a scout. Tim Connolly comes in at a recommendation of Masai Ujiri. Calvin Booth was the assistant under Tim Connolly and had been in the organization for longer than that. And the two guys here is Ben Tenzer's been with the organization for 20 years, and Wallace was here 4 years ago. So it's like everyone seems to be within the same. I mean, it's not Rocky's bad as far as insular goes, but it's almost like you spent almost 80 days to kind of arrive at this.
I know.
That's not, as George W. Bush would say, that's not a lot of strategery.
That's the worst. Like, I don't even know that I'm evaluating the actual hire, because again, like I can't possibly profess to know enough about either Ben Tenzer or Jon Wallace in this capacity. But like the PR side of this, the way that the optics are, I mean, this is rough. An absolute disaster, like a disaster. And not only that, the fact that they dropped it today at 8 a.m., the day after the NBA Finals.
It wasn't 8 a.m. It was like 7, because I get up at like 7:30. My alarm was like 7:18 or something. It was already 30 minutes stale.
To me, this is like the biggest. This is like the biggest news dump. This is the biggest news dump time that they could find, where all of the NBA is focused on what just happened last night. Are the OKC Thunder a dynasty? This, that, or the other. Then just sort of slide it in, knowing that locally we'd freak out, but nationally, no one's going to really take the time to analyze this.
I don't think that was the incentive for this, to be honest. I don't know what it was. Yeah. I mean, I don't think this was like a Friday news dump, because they could have done a Friday news dump. Actually, they could have done it at even more buried times. People are actually online right now for the NBA because the draft is in 2 days and the finals just ended. So this is actually kind of the timing. The 7 a.m. drop is definitely weird. It definitely feels like they could have waited till 9 or something, but that part of it's weird. I just think they have a philosophy, man. I think they have a philosophy on their front office. They do not spend big money on the general managers. It's just been the case. They will spend on coaches. This time they didn't have to, and I actually like the Adelman hire, so that one might make sense. But they don't spend on front office, and this is, I think, just something that they believe in, that front office is expensive, cheap, or the same. It worked out for them 3 times. They won 3 titles, but I also don't know that that's a rigid rule I would live by.
Well, it's certainly a set of principles, and I wouldn't subscribe to them myself, because they are seriously in danger of getting left behind in a lot of different areas in the NBA. And I think that is my concern, is that this is just another in the line. I mean, look, these guys could be great. Wallace could be absolutely great. And I'm absolutely hoping that they give him the best chance possible. I mean,
I'm actually excited for it, even though it's not my first pick. It is kind of like the Nuggets. If the Nuggets got the 21st pick in the draft this year, because they traded, I would be like, what are we doing? But you'd still be intrigued. You'd be like, you know what, though? It's kind of got some saucy moves.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, it's one of those. Actually, I always thought about this way, you know, like, look, everyone gets upset about this sort of thing, and I don't want to anger people about saying this, but sometimes you just got to give people a chance, and that doesn't mean you're caping for someone or in someone's corner. But I mean, look, sometimes you end up with the cards you're dealt, and if you could either keep railing against it or you can accept it and then say, okay, hopefully they do well, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. I mean, I hope that this Jon Wallace and Ben Tenzer can see what's on the horizon with Nikola Jokic and his remaining time in the league and say, we got to maximize this. And hopefully, and the people who matter, hopefully we can convince the people upstairs that this is the track that we need to go on. We have presuppositions. We all think it's going to go a certain way, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way. And sometimes they're able to have good persuasion skills, and maybe they talk to more agents than just Jeff Schwartz. That's the hope.
Yeah, the thing for me is, like, you know, you're working in the, I mean, the thing I always try and remember, and everyone should remember, is that there's nothing rigid or there's no absolute truths in a business that's all based on relationships and people making decisions. What I don't like is that more often than not, you have to establish a relationship with people around the league to be able to do deals with them, they have to know you, that you have to be around for a long time. You have to be able to have people think of you in a certain way. You know, perhaps somebody would be more likely to deal with, I don't know, the Minnesota Timberwolves than somebody in New York, whatever. I wish somebody was coming in that had a huge Rolodex that really was able to.
Yeah, real quick, just on that, I think part of why Tim Connelly took him when he left. Remember, Tim Connelly didn't take a ton of people, but he was one of them. And I think that was why. I mean, that was why it was explained to me, is he is a guy that gets us into rooms.
Okay.
So he might not have the Rolodex of somebody that's been in this for 40 years, like you're talking about, but I do think it is one of the skill sets that he brings to the table, as a wide network.
He does. I mean, he does come off as charismatic, like he does, and I do see like why he would be a person that you'd want. I mean, he does seem like, and I did the first thing that anybody did. I immediately checked his LinkedIn page.
Yeah, of course, what you do.
He graduated with a BA in English. And then got a.
Why'd you say it like that? English is a fine major.
Yeah, but like, I mean, like for your GM, like, I mean, I don't know, whatever. That doesn't really feel like the path I'm on. But he did get a master's in business management. I mean, I also saw that he was a model for Lululemon at one point in time. So listen, I don't know, like maybe Aaron Gordon, maybe he wants to talk to the Saks folks. Like,
get in on that sweet underwear money.
Yeah. So, well, here's the other thing. I guess the last part here we'll have Jeff kind of comment on, but I mentioned it earlier. I think all of the signals that the Nuggets are not going to make major moves. And when I say major moves, like, are they going to trade Michael Porter Jr., Peyton Watson, or this or that? I kind of think the Nuggets are really viewing this as a run it back year, and they'll probably try to add a couple pieces. What do you do with Dario Saric? He opted in. I still think that most likely means they're going to try to find a team to take him and then buy him out. I still think that's the plan. So there are moves to be made. Do they bring in a couple vet minimums, like those types of moves? But I don't think the Nuggets will spend this year trying to make big moves. And that, I think this move signals that.
Yeah. I mean, the longer this went on, the more I was like, oh man, this is not a team that is looking to get in on the ground floor, so to speak. And I do think they were sort of surprised that the league seemed to move before the draft. I think that kind of took everyone by surprise, to be honest with you. But I don't think
so. I actually disagree with that. I don't think that they were surprised. I think that they were deliberately slow in this. And here's one thing I will tell you. I had heard, that one of the reasons for it taking long was some front offices might have wanted to get through the draft or through the different things before they let a guy go. Like, the team still has to let a guy go. Yeah. What happened yesterday that Minnesota was involved in? Kevin Durant was traded to the Houston Rockets. Yeah. And I do wonder if there was it's Wallace, but we're not letting him go till the dust settles on this. Because if he comes to Denver and they're like, okay, what was the deal? What is Minnesota trying to get KD for? Now all of a sudden the Cats, this or that. So I do wonder if that was the domino that had to fall, where it was like, we didn't get him. All right, here you go. Here's John. He's free now.
Oh, yeah, that's a great theory, actually. I think that, look, that is what it is. I don't think they, as soon as the words "our answers are internal" came out, you were like, okay, they're projecting where they're going to go here. So nothing big was going to happen. I wasn't really necessarily worried about that. If it was me, I probably would make more radical decisions, but of course, I should be nowhere near basketball decision making. So, I'll be honest with you. I don't think they're looking at this year as a year to nail. I think they're looking at next year when they have a pick, the year to nail, the offseason to nail, or at least by the deadline. Because I think MPJ becomes a little bit more tradable by the deadline. Yeah. I think that's the evolution of thought, going from the top down. So
hopefully Zeke Naji too, Hunter Tyson, like all the guys that I think are going to be really hard right now are hopefully easier in February.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, and really, like, I mean, I actually am pretty much on board with the thinking that the Nuggets should not make a major shakeup. There's not they were very close. Like, I do think that they just need to build up the back half of this roster, which again is a phrase you've been saying for the last 10 years. But I mean, like Calvin Booth's philosophy of bringing in a bunch of young guys and having them get better and better and better that is kind of what got us into the last 2 years. It's exactly what got us into the last 2 years. When Calvin Booth came in, he made immediately the deals for KCP, and he also who else did he bring in right off the bat? I can't even remember.
Calvin Booth.
Yeah, it was like he got KCP and maybe
the big one. The big one
KCP was at the draft, right? Yeah.
The big move was the Bones Highland move for Reggie Jackson to me,
right.
Which was the other big one. And Bruce Brown, of course, is the other player.
And Bruce, that's right. Bruce Brown and KCP. And yeah, these guys definitely have the ability to make moves like that this year, which I think is the right move. Like, I think it is smart to just get trusted veterans to help out the bench, to be able to give you more options going down the line when, like a tough playoff series like the one we just went through comes up. But I don't know, man. I just was hoping to be a little bit more inspired. But again, to me, this is more of a waiting game than anything. And also, I just do not like the level of like corporate infrastructure that's being put in place, and something that is, in my opinion, more art than science. So I don't know. We'll see, but they are starting.
Beeline really hates corporate infrastructure.
I do. I watch it kill
I don't
everything.
blame you, man.
I watch it kill absolutely everything.
It's killed me twice over.
Yes. So it's just, you think about like Steve Jobs dies and they bring in Tim Apple. And it's not like Apple hasn't been failing. They've been succeeding, finding other ways to go about it, but they're slowly dying. Like there's no life there. Like there's no new innovation, no new products. It's just they're kind of seeing his vision all the way to the end. And then at that point, when something else rises up like AI, they're going to be left holding the bag, like wondering who they are as a company. That's kind of what it is with Jokic. It's like they have Jokic and they have to sort of like, they can sort of see it out by just kind of making marginal moves. They don't necessarily need a visionary. I just hope these are the right guys to make the right moves. They just need like two good moves.
D-Line's entire subconscious was in that paragraph right there.
Yeah. I feel illuminated by that entire, that entire spiel.
It was a little dark, a little sad, but very insightful. You guys forgot about the legendary DeAndre Jordan 2 minutes after the deadline, or after the.
We'll never forget about that.
That was.
I'll never forget. 2 minutes is doing some work. I think it was 2 seconds. I think it was the first Woj bomb of the entire offseason. Jeff, do you have any final thoughts about this before we let you go? Jon Wallace, Ben Tenzer, David Adelman.
Anything on watermelon smashing them?
Yeah, I'll be doing that later. You'll look for the video. No, I'll be honest with you. I just hope they don't F it up, and I guess that's all you can hope for.
Yeah.
In this situation, and I hope that Stan. I'm going to repeat it. Stan, Josh, I hope they give him the support they need in the front office, and make this network inside the front office as robust as you possibly can. I really hope they do that.
Yeah, I hope so too. Jeff, thanks so much for joining us. Everybody check out Colorado Sports Guys. He also has his own breakdown. He goes even more to, I'm sure, I haven't heard it yet, but I'm sure he go in even more detail about Workentine and Chapman.
I did, and thank you all for and obviously thanks for the support from you guys. And D-Line, I need to buy one of your shirts. So
hell yeah, what a guy! I love Jeff. What a guy!
All right, we'll kick him out of here for sucking up.
Get the hell out of here!
Get him out of here, man! With that last little line, what the hell?
Disgusting.
Yeah, one thing I will report here, I have heard, I think that much of the front office is going to stay in place. So Tommy Balcetis out the door, but I don't know that there's going to be a full cleaning house. I mean, that was one of the predictions I had made last week, that I thought maybe there would be a full overhaul, knowing obviously that the Tommy news would be coming. But I don't know if that's the truth. I think that a lot of people, including, our old pal Mike Singer, I think we'll find out in the coming days, but it might just be a run it back, but with this new guys at the top.
Yeah. Which is funny because it's like the Nuggets have sort of figured out where they need to be in the current state, but everything changes every year in the NBA. You just hope that like the goal that they're aiming at is still the right one come next year, where everything is completely different. I don't know, man. I don't know. At some point we should play this little clip that I pulled up.
All right, why don't we play it now? We have time.
Yeah, get to know the man a little bit.
Let's get to know the man, Jon Wallace.
Going to your personal background, you're in Denver prior to this.
Yeah.
Tim Connolly's hired in Minnesota. He brings you along with. Obviously, there's that relationship there.
Right.
Talk about that relationship.
Yeah. So known Tim since kind of the latter stages of my collegiate career. Always been familiar with him and his entire family who works in the NBA and just basketball in general. He's one of the brightest basketball minds I've ever had the pleasure of accessing, let alone working for. And so, being in Denver obviously was around a really good team, being around a two-time MVP. You just learn and you see so many of the small nuances that it takes to really put a elite caliber team on the floor. I've sat back, I've watched. He's a guy that's very inclusive. Tim he'll push you, but also give you a lot of opportunity to kind of see what is your leadership style, what is your basketball philosophy, how do you see the game, and you bounce those ideas, and he'll give you those opportunities to have the floor one day. It's like, hey, why would you do this move? How does it make sense, and how does it make us better? And I think through those real life opportunities, not simulations, it's forced me to really hone in on the skills of how I see the game and how I will put a team together. I think that, plus my playing background, has obviously allowed me to get to this point. But the biggest thing is being able to share with these guys and kind of get outside the box and be that servant leader that I've always had to be in terms of being a point guard or being a quarterback. I think those positions have kind of prepped me for this opportunity. So, I embraced it. I'm obviously continuously learning, and he's a resource for me as well as the other individuals, Matt Lloyd, Joe Conley, Dell Demps. Those guys are always making themselves accessible, allow me to bounce ideas off of them. So it's been a great situation for me.
Because obviously, this is, not just a developmental, program for the players. It's also for, someone who is working their way, into front office, situations like yourself. How does it feel for, a front office, head like Tim Connolly that's seen success with his second round picks, with, G League players, with guys who they're developing in-house, to entrust that, kind of process, to you, or, turn the reins over on that?
Yeah, I got a chance to see it develop, right from my face, but I think it goes back to one of the words I've used before, is just being able to project. But it's also having the humility to know that you're not always going to be right. So, try to staff accordingly, try to get to know and really take value in those relationships from the coaches, from RG to you guys, to the players. It's like, hey, what could I have done better? What more resources do you guys need? Where could we be better here? And the players know, they're going through this thing every single day. They're dealing with the emotions and dealing with the public criticism or praise. So it's, being able to come out the office, have that open door policy, and really take pride in the relationships to actually learn, how to make certain moves or where to better yourself, and just having a level of humility, I think all plays into it.
Oh my God, my camera died on me too. This is 3 straight hours of podcasting. So now things can get worse. Now I have to go to this one.
Oh my God. This is
so much worse.
This is real Adam. Oh God.
Oh, real Adam. No filter. Come on. Kel, turn that filter up on me, will you? The one that makes me look like a baby. So you mentioned charismatic. I agree. And I've gotten to know Jon Wallace a little bit while he was here with Tim Conley, and even when he was in Minnesota. I do find him a very likable guy. And that's important. That's really important. I always got along well with Tim and with Cal as well. Cal was a guy that I enjoyed because we connected over basketball, but I don't know that we would have connected over, much else. Jon Wallace to me is a guy that I think will connect with a wide range of people because he's just a guy. He's a very likable person.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that to me, it felt like he was actually, that's what it would feel like to be in a room when he was interviewing for the position, kind of talking about his background. I just thought it was interesting to kind of understand like where he has been in the ecosystem of the Denver Nuggets coming up, like what his involvement was with Tim Connelly, learning from that, like why Tim Connelly maybe would have brought him over. We've heard that Joe Connelly, Tim Connelly's brother, is a huge gave a glowing endorsement. We've heard, it sounds like you got the same thing from other people, like really thinking that this is a bit of an out of the box hire, and that's actually could be, bring a little bit of life into the room. But I mean, at least the guy is like qualified in the sense that he's been around specifically this organization, an organization that has shown that they want to keep the ship moving and sailing in the right direction, the same direction, hopefully the right direction, without necessarily making a ton of waves. In the end, I watched the interview. I mean, that was like a 3-part thing that I watched. This is from 2 years ago. Just trying to gauge the man, look deep into his eyes, look deep into his soul. Seems like, okay, like this guy definitely, he's been around. He seems a little savvy. He's obviously, in sort of a wooden position there, just talking to a guy in a room. So maybe you don't get the full spectrum of his personality, but I don't know. I felt a little bit better after watching that. I'm like, okay, I can kind of see this guy playing this role a little bit,
Yeah. Here's what I'll say about the Nuggets. I don't know that it's necessarily, there's not a lot of moves to be made. So you could say some teams, it's like they have to pull off 7 different maneuvers. I think the Nuggets have relatively few things they can and should do, but that they're really important. The stakes are high. The complexity is maybe medium, not high, not low. It's medium, but the stakes to the moves that they will make are so incredibly high. Yeah. And so that's the situation he falls into. And like I said, I would expect this summer to be somewhat, a couple moves here or there. We'll see what happens, but and maybe that's enough for the training on the fly, but we'll learn in the coming days exactly what happens. And we'll have more to say about this. There is a press conference tomorrow, which I think will be very illuminating. We'll probably spend a majority of the show on that. So I look forward to doing that. And but yes, the Denver Nuggets search for a GM is over. There is no GM. There's just 2 vice presidents.
Oh my God, there's no GM.
There's no GM. All right, we do have a couple super chats to get to. We also have a draft diehard sale, $36 intro offer for our you could become a diehard right now for just $36. That's about half of what you would pay at a full price, actually a little bit less.
Draft week. Get excited, everybody. Get excited. We have a new we don't have a GM. We don't have a pick. We do have Jokic, and we have a great offer for you. So we can make a little bit of lemonade here. Let's go.
All right, let's go. All right, let's get to these super chats, Kale. Ryan B says, Josh looking more and more like Monfort, who's lucky with GMs.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. Like,
yeah, I don't either.
I know for a fact, like the Monforts are looked at essentially as North Korea in the league. Like they're like the hermit empire. Like no one will deal with them. People think of them as like weird. People don't like have any interest in getting involved with what the Rockies are doing, and like they just don't know what they're doing. Like they're not baseball people. They just they wanted to be involved. Like the Kroenkes, as Jeff said, are basketball people. Josh specifically played basketball at a very high level. And he's friends with like LeBron James. Like they're like deeply entrenched in the world of basketball. So this isn't that. And I saw a comment that I actually really agree with, and I've sort of stuck by. And anytime that I get really nervous and upset about what the Kroenkes do, like they've made consistently really good decisions when it comes to GM hires. You can say what you want about Calvin Booth. He did
win a championship. Yeah.
Very first championship. He hired Masai Ujiri. He hired Tim Connolly. Like, there's something about his intuition that is compatible with what it is to bring in good, smart, competent GM. So from that standpoint, again, we do not have a GM, but we have whatever it is we have. Like, I feel reasonably good about.
I don't think it's the Momfords. This is an ownership group that is fresh off of 3 championships. We'll see what happens. I don't love it though. I mean, I will say that I feel a little bit uncomfortable, but we'll see. Kale? Big Honey, why wait all this time just to promote Ben Tenzer? We talked about this. I honestly think
don't know.
I just think that this was the decision, and I honestly wonder if they were sitting on it. I don't know if this. I don't think we'll ever know if they were just waiting for the Kevin Durant news to go down, and that's what the holdup was. But I suspect
that makes a lot of sense.
I suspect that it was something along those lines.
That makes a lot of sense. That essentially they had this deal in the works for, in their back pocket, just sort of waiting for the other shoe to drop, or the one giant shoe that cost Kevin Durant a championship to drop. And then they, as soon as it went down, they made the news for the news
public.
No.
Yeah. And I also think they viewed the draft as something that was like, we don't have a pick. We have too many young players. We're not going to trade into the draft to get a pick. So it's not like we're missing out there. Now, there are other trades that could happen, but I think they even look at it and say, are we really going to be able to trade Michael Porter? Probably not. I just think they view it as, hey, there's not a lot that's going to happen this offseason. But we'll see.
I mean, it's finally the shackles are off. It's swear time. The reports were that the Nuggets were actually in on the Kevin Durant talks, whatever that means. So I think Ben Tenzer has been acting as a GM, knowing that he was
100%.
Going to be given this title. And I'm sure that John was probably off. Had been talking, I'm sure, the whole time. Like, so they have actually had somebody at the wheel, even though it was not an official thing. My hope is that I know that the draft itself is not going to be something that they participate in, but it's what the draft means as far as like creating motion and movement for other teams who get desperate and want to make moves. Can you be a third team and take a previously unthought of veteran off somebody's hands that they're just they need to get, to help leverage a deal? I don't know. Like, I just want to make sure that these guys are involved in absolutely everything that they can to make sure that they're doing everything in their power to bring Nikola Jokic another championship.
What else, Gail? Matt Carew says, what's the point in owning the Nuggets and having the best player in the world if they are just going to be so uninterested in winning? Would have been 3-time champ by now if there was more depth and effort. Possibly. I don't know that is necessarily.
I don't think it's
fair. I think they're trying to win. You could say they're cheap in certain margins. I think that part is very fair, but this idea that the Nuggets weren't trying to win, if you want to know my take, my honest opinion about where the Kroenkes messed up this last year was not firing Michael Malone and Calvin Booth sooner. Because I actually think the roster and everything else, when you talk about the Nuggets were right there, to me, they were right there in that they should have done this sooner because they wore themselves out and ruined their opportunity and a better shot at winning the title this year. The fact that they did pull the trigger so late and got so close is awesome. But to me, that's the real complaint about the Kroenkes this last season. But that's opposite of what most people think.
Right. And I don't think that they were looking at the plan that they put in place as the cheap and easy one. I think that everybody was sort of organizationally aligned, except for apparently Michael Malone, with the idea of bringing in young guys, actually not, stockpiling picks, but using picks to get players. And the idea of growing their next generation of players that could help Nikola Jokic win, not necessarily last year, but the years following. I just think that maybe the plan is, was so predicated on the idea that those players all hit. And, that's been a little bit like dicey. That proposition has not really come to fruition.
All right, next one. Ben, 1994, OKC and other teams are going to be better. I can't believe we didn't even get to a haters ball today, Eric. We'll have to I was so excited for a haters ball today.
We can give it a bridge haters ball.
No, let's save it.
Okay,
man. We'll save it for tomorrow. Yeah, we can't do it. We don't even have our number one hater here. Brennan Vogt.
No, dude. I have so
Everybody
many
on the DNVR Nuggets took a vacation this week. I don't know what happened. I'm the only person in Denver, Colorado right now.
Well, I mean, like, to be fair to all of us, that season
year.
ended. That should be like when
Season's not over. Next season already started. Next season started. It's time to go. And Kale, I got to shout out Kale. He just said I'm in Denver too, of course. So the homie super producer Kale.
Yeah,
all right, what
great.
else we got? Astray says the Cronkies are basically turning into the modern man. Everybody's seeing this. You know what? I'm fine with this only because I hope not that this happens. I don't think Stan cares one bit about what people say about him, but I do hope that it's like pressure. You know what I mean? Yes. Do something that the Montforts wouldn't do. The only difference being more money and actual championships. We're so cooked, folks. I don't think we're cooked, but I don't feel great.
No, we're not in any way cooked. Like we're like, you know, we could be the Phoenix Suns. We could be we always
That's true. The Phoenix Suns spent money on all these. They did the opposite of what the Nuggets are
doing.
They
did. The Phoenix Suns did what everybody wants the Crushers to do. Maybe they are the Montforts.
Ballmer, same thing. Like, you know, he's hired all the best people. I mean, it's this stuff. You have no excuse if you lose and you don't spend money. But if you do spend money, a lot of teams spend money and they lose too, man. And it turns out being dumb.
Everyone loses except for one team. We all lose.
And guess what? They didn't spend money.
Yeah.
The Oklahoma City Thunder, very cheap team, but they made it work.
They grew their team. Whatever.
They grew it. Maddox says, Way Chat's talking. You think we got swept round one? Took the chance to game 7 with 3 severely injured players. Also, a new GM doesn't have to be bad, by the way. That's true. New GM doesn't have to be bad. I do think the Nuggets are both close and far, but they are also close. And they did push that team to 7 games, so we'll see what happens. Back in shape, Jamal. We don't have to argue over all these.
Get shit. Dude, that's the thing. Is it like, oh God, there's so many, all of this like consternation, everyone like wringing their hands. Like if Jamal Murray posts one like TikTok of him like lifting one weight, like a rock or something, I'll be like, yeah.
I know. I just so nice. I just need like the photo of him at the beach with the 6-pack abs, you know, and we're like, oh, all right.
Shaving my life.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, remember like how engaged Jamal was after the championship? He was hanging out with the summer league team. He was like super involved. And then like, it didn't matter at all.
It didn't matter, but it would still feel good to pretend it does.
It would feel good.
Diz says, unfortunate that this signals front office won't be doing much, but I'm glad it wasn't Bob Myers. Have you seen ESPN? That guy sucks. I will say this. I do think there's a little bit of Tim Conley. There's a little bit of Tim Conley in this, and that I do think, but the one thing I think the Cronkies are right about is that good GM, bad GM, like the margin's closer than most people think, you know, because the impact is somewhat small. I think Sam Presti maybe is like an exception to this rule. But at this, I do think there's a lot of, guy had one good pick and now he's paid as if he's Sam Presti. Right. And that happened. And I think Bob Myers might fall into that category where it's like, you can get $10 million for a slight upgrade. And you're like,
dude. I mean, I maintained all along until like a week ago. I'm like, dude, the only reason we want Bob Myers is because he's the only GM's name that they know.
That's so
he's
true.
Like,
that's all it is.
But then I got excited at the idea, like, all right, well, this is taking so long that I had to start getting super conspiratorial. I was like, wait a minute, like maybe he can't talk about new players because he's on TV, and that would be tantamount to tampering. And then somebody was sending me flight logs, like there was a flight.
Oh hell yeah! I missed those.
I got deep, but that's not my fault. Like they gave me so much time to let my mind race. If they would have just said like, "Yo, Ben Tenzer's a guy," I would have had all of this time to be like, all right, and talk myself into it. But nope.
This is back when the internet used to be fun, you know, like a lot more fun when we would track planes and stuff.
Dude,
now everybody
remember Peyton Manning? Like everyone in Denver was like, oh my God, Peyton Manning's on a plane.
Dude, I'm telling you, the most obnoxious day on the timeline ever was yesterday because all of the most annoying people on earth were arguing with all the other most annoying people on earth for virtue signal. This is why I said Halliburton should not play. He got hurt. And I'm right, and you're wrong because I'm a good person, and you're not.
You don't care about player safety.
I said the Thunder were good all year, and you said they were not as good as I said they were, and they wanted to prove me right.
Just imagine what would have happened if they painted the trophy on the court and didn't have the player say he would have torn it. Yeah, it is.
Exactly.
Exactly. the worst part, like you said, that we're not going to go into our haters ball. I unleashed a tsunami of hate like I haven't done in years. I was putting out.
You were going through it last night. Yeah, you had some.
I was so hateful last night.
Channel that hate till tomorrow. It'll feel stale, but whatever. Chris Peters, honestly, this feels like Kroenke doesn't want to pay nor trust Minnie to be a GM. No clear leadership, and it's concerning. I mean, it might play out that way. I'm saying everybody go watch Shogun. Stan Kroenke, Toranaga. Who I think even at the end, you can't tell, is he an evil guy, a brilliant guy? I mean, you can't tell. So fire Josh. All Kroenkes make Yoke GM stat, please. This is from Mr. Exquisite Nugget. Okay.
I mean, he was the coach. He was the coach. Why not the GM? That worked out really well for LeBron.
Is that it, Kale? All right. Looks like that is it. Hit that outro music. Do we have outro? Oh, Denver Thuggett comes in. This is James, super producer James. Do we owe the Kroenkes more slack? They plucked both Ujiri and Conley from relative obscurity. I remember the same convo happening when TC got hired.
Totally.
Again, but as Eric points out, it did take TC a little time to ramp up.
It did. I was irate when they hired Tim Connolly. I was like, you got a guy. Like, how are we going to make it? What's that face? Is that from me?
The volume and stuff was all messed up, but Kale fixed it.
Yeah, man. Like when we hired TC, I was irate. I was like, what an absurd notion that you would bring in a guy from the Washington Wizards to run this team. Like, we are so cooked. But then, he immediately hired Brian Shaw. So listen, it all worked out in the end. It did take him a lot of time to get his feet underneath him, and he right now is a force of nature. But that took a lot of time to get there. So we'll see what happens.
Well, hit us up in the comments of the show. Let us know what you want to hear from Josh Kroenke tomorrow, what you want to hear from Ben Tenzer, what you want to hear from Jon Wallace. I'm curious what the people want to hear as they address the media tomorrow. Everybody, hit that like button for us on the way out. We'll see you.